Good morning. Oh, that's loud. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's very good to see some very many familiar faces and others not so familiar. I think it helps me to calm down. My name is Eric Ngwiri. I work for CRS, working on global data analytics. I have been working in the space of data and use of data for the last 17, 18 years. Both as a vendor, I always like to say both as a vendor and as a user of technology. Today is not about me. I really don't have a voice. I'm here just to coordinate discussion about friends and practitioners in this space, working across different organizations in the data analytics space. And the idea behind this session is really to have an open and honest conversation about the realities of data and insights of data and how it's applied in organizations and how it's used. So it's going to be very conversational. It's going to be very open. We really encourage a lot of questions from all of you and really hope to have a sort of very broad interactive session. The idea, like I said, is what we have done in the last maybe 20 years is we've seen an evolution. I started in this space in the development of data collection tools. So I've worked for both Kinmetrica and Honor, and we were very focused on how do we build tools that we can use in the field to collect data. We've come a long way from that, right? We have a lot of information. But despite the development of these tools and advancement of these tools and technologies, one of the major bottlenecks is in insight delivery. And when I say insight delivery is when you generate this content and this information, how is it then used? Is it used effectively? Is it helpful? Do people actually take insights from those decisions, or are they just pretty dashboards and models and things like that? And so, like I said, my panelists is practitioners in this field, and I'll let them introduce themselves so that they can speak about their work, and then we can start the conversation from there. So you want to start, Zeneb?
Is this working? Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. My name is Zina Pevi, and I work for the Norwegian Refugee Council, where I lead our efforts on responsible AI adoption. Also spearheading our CLEAR initiative, which is an initiative aiming at building technical infrastructure to support data commons for early warning and early action. And I invite you to join the session tomorrow to learn more about it. Yeah, I've been working in this space for the last 12 years, covering different roles in different organizations, and I'll be sharing my perspective today from those different experiences and not only limited to NRC. So over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Verdina Subianto. I'm a data scientist with CRS. I'm with a group called Analytics for Impacts, where we support analytics needs across different sectors and country programs from agriculture, global health, and also market monitoring as well. I've been in this space also for about 15 years or so, and with CRS for 1 year, and from various institutions, from academic settings into US government settings as well. And I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. My name is Winnie Awur. I work for Development Gateway. We are an international NGO working to build digital tools to promote digital transformation with government and CSOs and NGOs at large. What we do is actually the sectors that we work primarily in are public health, education, agriculture. So some of what I will be speaking to will be touching on, the dashboards that we've developed in those sectors. I look forward to engaging you.
Thank you. So I'll start with a section I like to call reality check. And the idea is to talk a little bit about the work that we are all doing right now. So my first question will be to Zineb. If you think about the last year, or maybe a bit longer, can you think of one specific decision or operational work or activity that's changed as a result of some analytics work that you or your team has done? What was the decision and who had to make it and what changed because of that analysis or those insights?
Thank you, Eric. It's a tricky question. If I want to be honest, I can't think of one operational decision. And I think we need to maybe talk about what do we mean by operational. I think everyone in the sector, especially at different layers of decision making, think differently about what it means operational needs or operational decisions. From my perspective, I'm talking about how data that helps us operationalize our aid delivery and those decisions that are made at the last mile. And to be honest, I can't think of any analytical products that we delivered in the last 12 months that changed actually a decision on the ground just yet. We are working on changing that. And I think this is the reality that is shared across the sector. Making analytical products that actually work for the ground requires also figuring out what are the needs from the ground up. Most of the time, the technological decisions that are made are really very much decided at HQ levels or at donor level or at UN level, but not necessarily at the field level decision-making needs. Often the operational data that is also very difficult to get by. It's not something that we can easily achieve. So it takes a lot of effort to first understand the needs from the ground, to analyze the data landscape at the operational level, and to understand how we can solve the data gaps that exist. Data is very scarce when it comes to operational data that can actually help change a decision or make a decision. From our experience now in Sudan, that's where we've been working for the last 12 months. We are trying to bridge the gap between something happened and we are able to get there and help as quickly as possible and come prepared and informed. And quite honestly, we spend a lot of the time just trying to get the data and to get it to granularity that's useful. At the sector, we are still missing the very basics of operational data, such as population data. It's still not reliable. We still are missing reference data such as geospatial data that would tell us, for instance, what is a kind of an administrative level that we are working on. For instance, a lot of the data products that exist in the humanitarian sector stop at admin level 2, which is district level. If you are responding to an onset of a crisis, you're responding to displacement event, for instance, you need data that is way beyond admin level 2. But we don't even have administrative boundaries beyond admin level 2 for Sudan that are unified across the sector, so that could allow us to actually do meaningful analysis. So yeah, maybe I stop here, but yeah, the challenges are really, we are still far from solving them all. So I cannot honestly say we have solved a decisional, we have solved for an operational decision just yet.
Thank you for that. Radina, do you want to chime in on your experience from UCRS and other backgrounds?
Sure. So I think for specific example on analytics or data availability, and I think many of you have experienced this in the past year or so, a lot of data has been paused, and so there's a bit of scarcity, not scarcity, but disruption in the data set. And some of these data sets, we use them operationally, meaning this is used at the country program in order to make some decision or inform their decision. So at analytics level, we have to be able to pivot either to other data sets, and we have to judge that pretty quickly and be able to develop workflow pipelines to integrate either other data sets or trying to figure out how do we use the current data sets that we have. And again, with some pause of the data and some pause in the programs, we need to also find other data sets that can be used as a proxy for our monitoring. So again, we have to pivot pretty quickly. And I think just to chime in a little bit, I think in general, we all feel the changes in the funding landscape. And there's, at least from the analytics perspective, there's more pressure on trying to prove that there will be impacts in some of the programming. So we have to do a lot more of analytics or design programs strategically based on the data. So there are more pressure on that because we are constrained in funding and resources. So we have to be more strategic in the program. And a lot of this are really a lot of donor and the program design needs to be based on data. So.
Thank you. So Winnie, you work in a space that supports multiple organizations around developing insights from data. I want to flip that question a little bit and say, okay, presumably you've had situations where you've been able to develop a great data product. Maybe the insights were very sound. Have you seen the flip side of that question where you develop something that's really good, but it's not used or it's not adopted for whatever reason? Can you speak to that a little bit, maybe across the different clients that you work with?
That's a very painful question, specifically because I do have tangible examples of when we put our blood and sweat into developing these tools, and then after a few years, they're now null and void. One of them was we were working with a subnational government, and we were doing a procurement. And at the time, the leadership was pro-transparency, pro-accountability. And the beauty with this platform is it did exactly that. The people who wanted to tender, the people who are actually reviewing the tenders, it was easy for them to follow from beginning to end. And while we follow them in this journey, I remember there's a time they gave some figures about how many millions they actually saved because of using the platform, as opposed to, if it's not transparent, it's, oh, see me behind the tent, give me some money, then I'll fast track things for you. Now you could see for yourself, this is the stage in which it's at, next stage it's this. If it's dropped, at times they would even give reasons why. And by the time you saw who got the final tender, people did not feel aggrieved. There was a sense of, okay, I've been through the entire process. I understand why this person got it. So there was that transparency that came with it. And with that, people felt that the subnational government was being free and fair, so to speak, in the process. But again, this was tied to the leadership at that time. Enter a different regime, and they have their own ideas of what they want to focus on in the next few years. And then that idea is shelved. So at that point where you could actually hold the leadership accountable previously and petition, why did you get this for XYZ reasons? Now there was no insight as to who has gotten that tender. How did this process look like? How many people tendered to start with? So that change in leadership for us felt like a big blow. But looking back, I think one of the ways that we can potentially work around that is to ensure that the program is maybe two-part. The first part focusing on the technical parts, making sure that that system is up and running. But the second part can also be how can we work with the CSOs to make sure that they can hold leadership accountable even beyond the first regime. That way, whatever tools we end up developing can actually be sustainable. Another experience that we had was, again, this was a multi-country program. And in one of the countries, they had requested for this kind of data set, and they wanted a dashboard that reflected the data set that we collected. When we did exactly that, they were happy, they were thrilled. And it was very good feedback because we got very many use cases as to this is how we are going to use this data. We previously didn't have this data from the 70s. Now that we have it, this is how it's going to inform our work moving forward. But we also got too excited because we saw that this works, and because we are also supposed to venture into country B, let's replicate that. When we did that, the partners looked at us, told us, wait a minute, we are seeing what you're sharing, but for us, we did not tell you that this was an urgent need. So while it was sound, the data was good, they also asked actually one they interrogated the local partner that we worked together with. So for us, we thought, the process was free, fair. We've gotten this partner, we've gotten this data, but to the local stakeholders, this is not a partner that they were familiar with. So again, the dashboard might be good, but who did you work with to collect that data from the get-go? So the trust that they have in local partners is crucial. And for us, again, it's just lesson learned that when you're going in, we do not know it best. Engage our partners on the ground, find out, yes, these are the people that we're going to work with at the end. At these partners, people you're comfortable with, we get the green light and we proceed. And we've seen that there's actually uptick of those tools when we do that.
Great. So I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball. I apologize in advance. So we've had, there are the issues with data availability. There are issues with, I guess I'd call it trust. There are issues with some of the political systems. I think to all of you, one of my questions is, why then do this? Why invest time and effort in thinking about building and spending a lot of resources in building analytical products? From your experience, why do you think this is worth it? And what are the things you can speak to that speak to the value of this work in your day-to-day life and generally for the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why are we doing this? And I think especially in a time where resources are scarce, we've heard everyone talk about funding cuts. How can we justify spending more efforts and more resources on data and technology in general? I think we really need to see it from a perspective that data can enable us to do things that we are not able to do now. Maybe it's like unlocking potential for being more, it's not about efficiency in the short term, but it's really about the long term, being able to reach people that we might not be able to reach if we didn't know that they are there. If I can give an example from Sudan again, in Al-Fasher, for instance, there was the humanitarian community was surprised by the amount of people that were coming out, or the figures of population that were coming out, actually because people were killed. So the figures of casualties were higher than what we accounted for were living in the city. So that kind of darkness we work in or we operate in the sector is where I see potential for data to unlock insights beyond what we can see. Especially for an organization like NRC, we work in areas that are hard to reach, that are not accessible. Potentially we're not able to be there physically, but we might be able to send money, cash through some different means. And so we need to know how many people live in a certain area, what are their existing vulnerabilities, how can we support them the most? And there is no way we can do this without technology. There is no way we can do this without data. It takes a lot of effort and it takes resources, but I really believe that it's worth investing in it as a collective, not as an organization on its own. I really think that it's time that digital transformation moves beyond what do we need to do better procurement? What do we need to recruit people? How do we have a good HR system? I think most organizations have good HR systems, logistics systems, systems that manage resources from an HQ level. How do we manage grants? How do we actually optimize on getting most money from this scarce funding environment? But when it comes to actually operational data, and by that again, I mean data that we need to deliver aid more effectively, we are very much lagging behind. And it's in the times that we live in today, with the complexity of needs that exist on the ground, we cannot not have these systems. Yeah.
I think from the analytics perspective, I mean, as Zinab said also that we understand the potential of analytics and also digital transformation. But on the other hand, we have data quality issue, especially in the humanitarian space. But then from analytics perspective, if we don't start doing this, if we don't start providing insights and analytics, how do we improve the data quality? Because we won't know until we do this analytics, this modeling. That's when we find that there's issues in the data quality, in the data collection. So if we don't start either small or if we don't invest on it, then how do we improve the modeling, the data quality, and also the trust? Even just for forecasting, like results from forecasting is very hard to operationalize this because implementers will say, I cannot trust this forecast because either data quality or the methods are not sound enough. But if you don't start small, if it's not in your awareness, I think it's hard to improve, although we know the potential of it. So,
Vinny, do you want to chime in on that question?
I think for me, it's just recognizing that change takes time. It's usually we want to do something that, you get quick results and so forth. So understanding that the process you're investing it now does not yield dividend now, but you're likely to do so in a few years to come. So that for me is particularly important. The other bit is also being realistic with the kind of change that you want, the kind of impact that you want to have from that data. For us, we want to work with policymakers to make sure that they have evidence-informed policy making. So when we start a program, we'll say, oh yes, we are hoping that this bill passes through, But some of these bills, it takes years, takes 10 years even for it to be passed. But how can you be realistic in the sense that what I want is, I want someone from Ministry of Health, for example, to be a champion for the kind of data that we are presenting, the analytics that we are sharing, so that when they have their international campaigns, for example, and you're following their campaigns on X, for example, you see them cite your data. Is that a win in itself? Or if it's not a win at the bill has been passed, then it's no win at all. So I think understanding that change takes time. Let's invest in now to yield dividend later. And just acknowledging the kind of impact that we are comfortable getting in the immediate term. Yeah.
Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about an area that I think all of you would resonate with, which is interpretation of insights. And fundamentally, I think most of us have experienced this. One, you have different groups of people that look at the same insights and draw different conclusions or want different conclusions from the same type of data. So when you think about, for example, in a country, in a multi-country organization, where you have a country director and a field officer needing different things from the data, or you have technical advisors that are looking for specific insights, how do you think about and design insights differently for those different groups of people? I'm talking about the process. Where do you start to think about what the different groups will look for? Anticipating their needs. I'm answering a bit of the question, even though I shouldn't, and building out those insights in a way that resonates with groups that will use this data and these insights in meaningful ways. Zinab, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I want to take a step back about data in general, how it's used or how it's perceived in the sector. And I think I want to touch on the issue of data literacy. Nobody wants to talk about literacy because they feel like, am I illiterate? No, you're not illiterate. You're data illiterate, and that's fine. And we are here to teach you, not to teach you, but to introduce you to how to interpret the data. When we're making a dashboard, everybody sees it differently, depending on their level of data literacy. However, I think right now with the advent of AI, everyone there is a whole trend about how interpretation or dashboarding is dead. We really need to start moving beyond dashboards that are kind of static, even if they seem dynamic, they are not. There is one way of how the data is fed into that dashboard, how it's displayed and how it's structured that is static. The data maybe is not, but the dashboard itself is static. Those dashboards can serve one purpose, but they cannot serve all purposes as much as we try to put a lot of information into them. And I think one potential of AI where I really see a great potential is how to move beyond dashboarding to actually talking with your data, asking the data questions and getting answers that are dynamic, that are as up to date as possible. Of course, it takes a lot of effort also to build data infrastructure that can support this type of interaction with the data. But I think this would really help us to make that leap beyond how data is used now in the sector. Dashboards, again, they take a lot of effort. There's a lot of consultations that go into them. And in the end, you have a static dashboard that, serves, maybe it just looks great, but is it actually useful for decision making? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think in addition to the user's role, but also understanding the user's background as a data literacy, because we've seen like a country director or leadership who's very data savvy, so they wanted to know a lot of details. So that design will be different. So they will be similar to what we present to the technical team or the technical advisors. So again, it's not one size fits all. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. In my previous life, we had to build a different set of dashboards from the same data sets so that it can serve the country programs and even our Ministry of Health partner. And then we have to clearly state it. What does a figure, what does a visual mean? What can you take it from these visuals? And then for the technical folks, sometimes we put in what are the caveats of this insight. So if I say the rainfall is higher this year, but what does that mean? If it's 50% higher, you might see areas were flooded, or you might want to check on some of your areas. So things like that needs to be clearly defined in your in the design as well. So understanding not only the role, but also their background would be helpful.
So in our work, and I want to be a little bit practical, a lot of the humanitarian and development data is partial at best, but also politically sensitive. And I think Zina kind of talked about this quite a bit. This is before I jump into AI, because I think everyone wants to understand what's happening with AI. Can you speak to specific cases where you had to navigate political sensitivity of the data sets or the insights? And I'm talking not just geographic political sensitivity, but also organizational, and how you thought about that in terms of thinking through the process. What are the things practically that you do to develop products that are usable while navigating these realities? And if you can speak to both organizational and geographic as well, or any sort of political elements, that would be helpful.
Me. So yeah, we're having a candid conversation here, and we can be very frank about the reality of our sector. I'm talking again about the humanitarian sector. I'm not very familiar with the development one, but I'm sure it has similar challenges. When it comes to operational data on humanitarian response, a lot of the time it comes from UN agencies. So we have to wait for UN agencies to produce the figures of people in need, the figures of population in different areas, and how the response is ongoing, the status of the response, who's doing what where. All of these data sets are very useful. They, however, take a long time to be published. Why? Because it's the UN that's publishing them. UN has member states, and there are always a lot of political pressure about what is being published. One of the great initiatives in the humanitarian sector is the Humanitarian Data Exchange, which is a platform. If you're not familiar with it, it's an open data platform where humanitarian organizations or other organizations working in this space can upload data and tag it and give it metadata and make it available to others. It's a great initiative. However, it often runs in this challenge of data curation and data accessibility. So there was an effort in the last years to produce, to make this platform API ready. So to make that data available through protocols for other platforms to consume the data. And this was a great initiative, and it's led by OCHA, and OCHA has put a lot of effort into making some of the data on HDX available through that API. However, only some of the data is still is available. I think I'm not sure the last figure was like maybe 20% of the data from HDX is made available through the API, which is not enough. And the rest is not all because of political reasons, and also because of political reasons that, again, impact resources. So the data has to go through layers of curation, levels of curation before it can be made available through an API, which means it's kind of unsustainable for OCHA right now. Actually, they're thinking about maybe shutting it down. It just takes a lot of effort to have humans go through that data, get it validated through the different layers of a UN agency before it can be made available to the sector. So I think that's, for me, illustrates the most dramatic impacts of political not sensitivity, but political constraints on data availability. Yeah.
Thanks. In our experience, we found that we needed to get ahead of the game before even doing the data collection, in the sense that when we are doing the methodology, at the point of developing the methodology, we had to identify who needs to be brought into the fold for these data sets to have that political acceptability, at the end of it all. Your methodology could be sound, but at the end of the day, you have a nice dashboard from that, the study that was conducted and all that. But the people that we want to use this content in country will say, no, we don't understand the process that was used. So what we do is, right from the methodology phase, we'll institute some sort of research advisory committee where we ensure, do we have the Bureau of Statistics in that meeting? Do we have someone from the Ministry of Education or Ministry of Health, depending on who we would want to interact directly with this content? Who is likely to take this data and amplify it in their work? So we would identify those people, we bring them into some sort of a research advisory committee, and we would update them and also get their input at every juncture. So from methodology, they would give input, this can work, this will not work for X, Y, Z reason. We take that on board, we finalize methodology. We get into the data collection based on the challenges that we face. We find that some of these people that we have now brought into the advisory committee role have also faced similar challenges in maybe national studies that they have previously conducted. So then they give their input. Right at the point of data analysis, we start sharing, the findings slowly in the form of, we need you to validate these findings. Does this make sense? The process is, it takes much longer than what we would like. We would like to just get in, do the data collection, do the dashboard and leave. But at the end of the day, if we do that, will it just be a tick box? And will it be used the way we would want? So we find that this other process takes time, but at the end of the day, we find that the ownership even moves away from DG. Sometimes it's like we are a footnote. They'll say, oh, this is our data, we did this, we did that, because we carry them along in the journey. So that has been helpful. Where we also need some specific people who we need to speak, no, I don't say Kenyanese, in some instances, but there are certain individuals who also understand some politics that needs to be navigated. We also bring them to the fold. And when we attend the meetings with them and they are having the conversation, sometimes maybe on our behalf with our state, the state agencies that we are collaborating with, we find things move much more smoothly compared to it just being us. So when they see this level of inclusivity, we find that it's much easier to navigate the politics side of it. In one of the other instances, we hit the ground running, yes, but the organization tells us, yes, we understand the importance of having this dashboard. Yes, we understand you're using open source data, but there is data that we have, and we feel we are not yet at the point of doing this dashboard. So if you came 2 years from now, we would accept you with open arms. But because you've come at a point where we are still figuring out what other data gaps do we have, then we will not embrace you completely. So then at that point, we also have to pivot and we engage our funder and we'll tell them, okay, this country needs more time to get the data in order. The interest is there, yes, but we are likely not to build this dashboard in this current phase. So how do we tweak our engagement in this country where we've already established that there is will in that specific organization, and work with them to ensure that they get ready by the time we want to start a phase 2. So that is something that we find works in navigating the politics.
Thank you. 60 minutes is a very short time to go over everything. I'm sure the audience has a lot of questions, so I'll ask one question on AI, but I will not ask an obvious question. Zinab hinted at one of the questions that I wanted to ask. The next evolution of data and use of data is what I call self-service analytics. And the idea is that individuals in our organizations are going to increasingly have access to the opportunity to interrogate insights or information from existing data sets or new data sets, both internal and external, using conversational tools. And we've already seen that in a different context. You can ask questions of your data sets. You can ask it to develop a graph or a chart or, create all kinds of insights from the data. And of course, depending on what nuance you're building in, it will be pulling information, and we've seen this already happening, from your data set. So it's a multi-layered question. That obviously brings a question of trust, because what then are you relying on to build your insights, especially if you have it on your desktop? 2, what are we putting in place as safeguards and processes to help our teams think about an ideal situation? But then the last one is, what then becomes our role? Because then we are basically putting in place mechanisms for us not to exist. So how do you think about this evolution? I'm trying to deliberately take a different approach to this so that we are not thinking about it from the obvious things around AI.
Great. Yeah, I can't leave this panel without talking about how to do AI properly, or how I believe, or how we believe at NRC we can use AI for the kind of use cases you just mentioned, Eric, because it's quite sensitive. We cannot just expect that a tool that we buy out of the box can solve this problem for us. It takes a lot of preparation and data foundation for AI tools to be able to answer the questions without introducing their own bias and their own limitations. And this is a question of what tools are available to us for the humanitarian development sector. I think we are quite a lot of the time sold on the big tech vendors. They promise big things, and right now I'm not sure if any of them are here, but I'm not scared to talk about them badly. Yeah, so I think you can go to so many ICT conferences, and there's a lot of great things talked about how we can just plug one new tool and then you have everything at your fingerprint, but it's just not true. So there is a lot to be done from the technology side, from the people side, and from the cultural side of the organization, how to make it work. But I wanted to just mention again that data is key. First, you need to have your data in order. You need to get it AI ready, but just basically ready. And then you need to look into alternative AI solutions. And you don't need to just subscribe to a new system and expect it to work. We need to look into solutions that allow us also to share data among different organizations without be exposing it to tech vendors that might just tomorrow decide to give it to whomever can pay the price for it. So I think it's about being responsible. Again, it was mentioned a lot in the plenary this morning about how we what technological decisions we make, how we are collecting people's data and how we are treating it, how we are safeguarding it. And so using AI has all these implications that need to be taken into account. There is great potential. Again, it's already proven to work. As I said, that we can really make that leap beyond having. One thing I like to mention is that most of humanitarian organizations actually operating on the ground don't have the luxury to have a data scientist on board at every single country or every single area office. And that's not going to change tomorrow. But we really now can enable similar capacity with introducing AI in a meaningful way and in a responsible way to field operations that can have as if they have their own data scientists on board. Does this mean we don't have anything to do or we lose our job? No, it just means that we are actually able to multiply our impact beyond what we can do today. Thank you.
Yeah, I think with the movement for the democratization of data and analytics, I think it's quite hard to have trusted resource or insights. And I think as a data scientist, of course, when you develop your products, you always questions the data with the nuances, the assumptions, and all that. But then once everything is available publicly, and anyone can do this using whatever AI or whatever tool they have, whatever the data, then the users may not have the same nuances or context. So I think maybe the challenges will be how to educate the data users, the insights users on being critical on any of this outputs, on any of this data sets. So maybe that's part of the responsible AI use. But I think it needs to be there's need to be effort to communicate how to be critical of the data and analytics that you have. So.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot about responsible AI and increasing trust in data, building the building blocks to make sure that the data that's being used is sound. So we're not losing our jobs. There's still a lot to do. We've heard about data literacy and different aspects of this to build out our interest and insights from data. But I want to turn the conversation over to the audience. I'm sure you have very specific questions or very general questions to the panel. Based on what you've heard today and what you know about the work that's being done here, please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the very interesting insights. I have a very short question on AI literacy. Zineb, I know you touched on digital literacy, and the AI train is moving and moving fast. So how do we ensure that people are not left behind in terms of understanding how to use what AI is, how to use it, and I guess how to maximize it? Thank you.
Morning. My name is John from Open Institute. This is a question for Zainib. You said that dashboard needs to be dynamic and move away from being static. I'm curious, is this how NRC is thinking? Is it the direction that Claire is going, putting the intelligence in the shared data rather than in the individual tools?
Two questions for me. Thank you. About AI literacy, as you just mentioned, the technology is moving so fast. How can we catch up in a sector where we don't have much resources to train? I think it's a tricky question we're still struggling with. I think, however, all we can do is provide the basics, awareness about the limitations of this technology and the potential of it. I think everyone knows the potential. We don't need to do more promotion of that, but really about the limitations, and then leave it to the individuals. Actually, this technology is like the most easy to adopt. You can just ask it a question and you get an answer about how to use it. So it's really about, I don't think we need to do any more prompt training or any of that, but really just get people to start using it in a responsible way and leave it up then to the user to self-train and upskill. To answer your question, that is the ambition, and at least that's the ambition behind Clear, is really to first focus on the data and leave it up to the users to define the analytical products they need and to actually create them. So we will start, we're starting with just examples of dashboards or insights, but we also provide a chatbot that is based on an LLM, that is self-hosted, that's already has all the guardrails and everything. And we're also looking into fine-tuning for specific use case that are related to Clear. And then leaving it to the users to take the intelligence as they consume the intelligence, basically.
Maybe one or two last questions.
Hello. Hi, this is Sampath. I work for Weltanga Hilfi, and I work as ICT4D advisor. And I'm in the sector for the last 15 years. I keep hearing this term called data-driven decision making, right? And every time when we build products, I mean, at least from my experience, we build products top down, right? Because the management wants this and that and everything. And at the end of the day, we delay building that entire product for a certain reason. And then we really go back and find a solution that, okay, the whole problem of having a delay is not having a bottom-up approach, right? Where you actually go and talk to the people to understand what they really need and then build the product, right? So we have learned this, I mean, again and again. We are doing the mistake again and again. And now the whole world is talking about localization, right? So what are you doing in your organizations where, especially Zainab, you are saying that you don't have enough resources on ground to really build that capacity on ground, right? So how are you relating your role currently and to emphasize that the localization is also taking a front seat in, at least in your organizations? Yeah.
Localization. So at the Asian PW, there was this really nice sentence, there's a humanitarian networks and partnership week, as global as necessary, as local as possible. And I think really this applies to technology as well. There are some technologies that will be developed globally and they will enable local actors to do things that they couldn't do on their own. But then the adaptation and the actual adoption needs to be driven by local needs. And so it has to be really, there needs to be a merging in between top down and bottom up. Because I just speaking from NRC experience, we had this also for a long time. So the country officers are kind of autonomous to decide what technology to use. But then of course they were left on their own. You can't expect a small country office to have the same resources as a bigger country operation. So I think we need to have that that top-down enablement and bottom-up adoption.
On our side, what we also find works is conducting an assessment right before you start that development. So we map out who are the target audience for the tools that we want to develop. We select a few people that we ask them targeted questions that ultimately inform how we build the dashboard. So that for us has been the standard practice at Development Gateway. We start with the assessment. If it's 20 to 30 people that we end up talking to, we get findings from that. We call them back and tell them, this is what you've said. Based on this, this is how we'll proceed to develop the tool. And once we start developing the tool, again, we'll still call them back for other feedback sessions to tell them that you had prioritized XYZ. We've now developed the tool up until now. This, does this speak to the need that you have as a CSO who is engaging Ministry of Health, for example? So we get a lot of feedback, and it's a constantly iterative process for us. And again, the process takes longer because of that kind of iteration. But what we find is when we carry them along, and when we are just solely working based on what they have identified as the specific needs, there is that increased uptake. What we just also don't stop at the point of the dashboard is available, here you are. We go back and now look at the Google Analytics, for example, to see how much time are people spending on these platforms. If this page, for example, we are only seeing someone is spending an average of 1 minute compared to another page where they're spending an average of 5 minutes, for example, there is a difference. What is the driving factor for that? Is it because in this specific platform, the visuals speak nothing to this person? They arrived, they saw it was complicated and they left. Is that what happened? We then again ask these questions back to the users, and based on the content we get, we iterate the dashboard to make sure that it is as user-friendly as possible.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, we lost 5 minutes at the beginning of the session, and time is up. Please join me in thanking the panelists today for their insights. They are available. You can reach out to them or speak to them individually, and appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.